The cry sliced through the African night, thin, fragile, and far too small to belong in a world built on tooth and claw. Dr. Hrik van der Weer froze mid-step, the beam of his patrol flashlight trembling just enough to betray the long hours behind him. At first, he thought it was the wind slipping through the acacia branches, but then it came again, a desperate mewing sound that didn't belong to any animal that should have been alone. He swept the light across the red earth until it caught something impossible, a pale smear of white curled tightly into the dust. For a heartbeat, he mistook it for a scrap of cloth blown in by the evening storm. Then the cloth moved. It tried to lift its head. It failed. Hrik's breath hitched. A white lion cub, 3 weeks old at most, barely 2 pounds. The kind of genetic rarity that wildlife documentaries talked about with reverence. The kind of creature that, in the wild, almost never lived long enough to stand on its own feet. And this one had been abandoned. Its eyes, still clouded blue, fluttered weakly as he approached. No mother, no pride, no comforting rumble of a lioness nearby. Only silence stretching across the plain like a verdict. "Easy now, I've got you," he murmured, scooping the cub into his hands. Its body was cold, dangerously cold, dehydrated, fading fast. He tucked it inside his jacket, pressing it against his chest to share whatever warmth he could. Every instinct in his career told him to walk away. Conservation meant letting the wild remain wild. Letting nature decide. Letting the weak die so the strong could hunt another day. It was the rule he'd repeated to volunteers, to visitors, even to himself on nights darker than this one. But looking at that trembling bundle of white fur, he felt something break inside the rules he lived by. Not tonight. Not like this. He turned toward his vehicle, tightening his arms around the tiny body. As the engine rumbled to life, he kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other against the cub's fragile back, feeling each shallow breath like a ticking clock. Halfway down the dirt track, his radio crackled. "Hrik, it's Collins. Just a heads up, I'll be on site first thing in the morning. Big assessment day. Make sure everything's in order." Perfect. Exactly what he didn't need. Mr. Collins, the Foundation's stern-faced benefactor, disliked surprises almost as much as he disliked deviations from protocol. A dying white lion in Hrik's jacket would undoubtedly qualify as both. Hrik clicked the radio off before his voice betrayed him. For a moment, the weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders, not just for the sanctuary, but for this tiny creature whose heartbeat now fluttered against his chest like a candle fighting wind. The cub stirred weakly. Hrik adjusted his jacket around it, murmuring reassurance he wasn't certain it could hear. "Hang on, little one. Just hang on." The sanctuary lights appeared ahead, warm squares glowing against the vast darkness. Home, such as it was, a modest collection of solar-powered cabins, medical supplies, and 2 loyal dogs who guarded the compound more faithfully than any security system money could buy. Thor and Luna would sense the urgency the moment he stepped inside. He parked beside his quarters and hurried toward the door. Before reaching it, he hesitated, not because of fear, but because of hope. "This story," he whispered to the cub, "isn't over yet." Then, he pushed the door open. Thor lifted his massive head first, ears forward, sensing the tension. Luna followed, her gaze soft and searching. Both dogs stood, alert but not alarmed, ready, waiting, attuned to their human in a way only Rottweilers trained for companionship and protection could be. "You two? I need your help tonight," he said quietly. As the dogs drew closer, the cub released the faintest whimper. Luna's ears twitched. Thor's nostrils flared. The moment stretched, uncertain, delicate, suspended between instinct and something far more human. This was the beginning of a story no one would believe unless they saw it. A story that would one day travel far beyond the savanna, carried by people who still believed that compassion could rewrite fate. And if you're one of those people, someone who believes in second chances, in healing, in the fragile beauty of life, you'll fit right in with Whispering Hearts, the place where stories like this are kept alive. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. It helps us continue rescuing vulnerable animals, supporting conservation work, and sharing the kinds of real-life miracles that remind us why empathy matters, even more than financial security, even more than legal protection, even more than insurance, and all the things we worry about in our daily lives. Inside his jacket, the cub shifted again. Alive. Barely, but alive. And that was enough for tonight.
The door hadn't even finished swinging open when Thor stepped forward, his heavy paws silent on the wooden floor. At 4 years old, he carried himself with the quiet authority of a seasoned guardian, broad chest, black and rust coat gleaming under the dim light, eyes sharp with the kind of intelligence that never missed a thing. Luna rose beside him, softer around the edges, her gait smooth, her head tilted in that gentle, questioning way that made people forget she was every bit as capable as her mate. Both dogs froze when they saw the bulge inside Hrik's jacket. "It's okay," he murmured, though the tremor in his voice suggested even he wasn't sure. "Easy now. Gentle." Thor inched closer first, lowering his massive head to sniff the unfamiliar scent. Musky, feline, sick. Luna followed, her breath warm against Hrik's chest. When he slowly unbuttoned his jacket and revealed the tiny white face, both dogs' expressions shifted. Thor's tense curiosity sharpened into wary calculation. Luna's softened into something almost maternal. The cub made a faint sound, a rasping plea so small it barely stirred the air. Luna leaned in and, without hesitation, licked the crusted corners of its eyes. Once, twice, the way a mother might clean her newborn. The cub blinked, weak but responsive. Thor stiffened at first, then exhaled through his nose, a low rumble vibrating in his chest. Not a warning, more like a question, a challenge to the unknown. But when Luna nudged the cub gently with her muzzle, inviting him to share her acceptance, Thor stepped closer and touched his nose to the cub's fur. Just like that, the house shifted. The walls didn't change, the lights didn't brighten, but something in the air realigned, making room for the fragile life Hrik had carried in from the darkness. He laid the cub near the small heater beside his bed, layering towels into a makeshift nest. Luna settled immediately at the cub's side, curling her body into a protective arc. Thor lay down on the other end, still alert but calmer now, as if he'd accepted the unspoken contract. Whatever this is, it belongs to us tonight. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Thank you," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he meant the words for the dogs, the cub, or whatever force had allowed this moment to exist at all. He took a seat on the edge of the bed, watching the tiny creature struggle to breathe evenly. Its ribs were painfully visible, rising and falling like fragile reeds in a dying breeze. Every few seconds, it twitched, seeking warmth it no longer remembered how to find. Luna shifted her weight, easing closer until the cub's head rested against her front leg. Thor lowered his chin onto his paws, eyes half closed but trained on Hrik, as if to say, "We're here. We understand." The sanctuary around them creaked in the night wind. Wooden beams settling, distant wildlife calling across the plains, the hum of solar batteries charging for the morning. Normally, these sounds gave Hrik comfort, grounding him in a world he understood. But tonight, They only reminded him how fragile everything truly was. His radio buzzed again, startling him. A text message from Mr. Collins lit up the screen. Arriving at dawn. Need full transparency. No surprises. He stared at the words for a long moment. He imagined Collins walking into this room in a few hours, seeing the illegal rescue curled between two Rottweilers like a misplaced miracle. Collins cared about liability, insurance, risk management, the kinds of high-value concerns that filled accounting meetings and grant applications. Words like veterinary cost coverage, wildlife insurance policies, and sanctuary compliance audits ran through his mind, terms he knew Collins would use like weapons. He shut off the screen and rubbed his eyes. "It's just you and me for now," he murmured to the cub. "We'll deal with the rest when the sun comes up." The cub stirred, forcing out a tiny, scratchy chirp. Luna responded instantly, nuzzling it closer to her warm belly. Thor shifted as well, expanding the protective half-circle they had formed, leaving no draft, no cold air, no threat that could reach the fragile body between them. Hrik felt something tightened in his chest, something quieter than fear, deeper than concern, a sense that this moment, the strange little scene in his modest home, was the beginning of something that could not be undone. Outside, the wind carried the distant roar of a wild lion, low, commanding, reminding the night who ruled these plains. But inside the sanctuary walls, hierarchy meant something different. It meant trust. It meant teaching. It meant choosing to protect the weakest among them. The cub's breathing steadied. Not strong yet, but steadier. Hrik leaned back against the wall, exhaustion pulling at his bones. Thor and Luna kept watch, and for the first time since finding the cub on the cold earth, he allowed himself a moment of hope. Tomorrow would bring questions, maybe consequences, almost certainly conflict. But tonight, there was only this tiny life, two loyal guardians, and the fragile beginning of a bond no one could have predicted. And for now, that was enough.
The first 72 hours unfolded like a long, trembling breath, never quite exhaled, never fully drawn. Hrik slept in restless minutes rather than hours, waking each time the small bundle beside the heater whimpered or twitched. The cub's existence seemed to flicker like a weak flame, sometimes brightening, sometimes shrinking to a faint glow that made Hrik's heart stop every time it dimmed. Thor and Luna took shifts without being asked. Luna pressed her warm body along the cub's tiny spine, keeping its temperature from dropping too low, while Thor stood guard at the foot of the bed, ears rotating at every sound inside or outside the house. The big Rottweiler barely slept, his brown eyes following every movement with quiet vigilance. On the second night, the cub's breathing faltered. Its little chest rose in shallow, uneven jerks. Its paws twitched helplessly against the towel. Hrik knelt, rubbing its sides in slow, firm strokes the way he'd been taught years ago. "Come on, little one, stay with us," he whispered, feeling panic creep dangerously close to the surface. The cub didn't respond, but Luna did. She crawled forward, pressed her nose against the cub's ribs, and began licking in steady, rhythmic swipes, almost urgent, almost commanding. Thor stepped closer too, as if lending his silent weight to the effort. After a long, terrifying moment, the cub released a small cry, thin but alive. Hrik sat back in relief, letting out a breath that seemed to drain years from him. By the end of the third day, the cub, whom he'd begun to call Atlas, could lift his head without wobbling. He drank formula from the bottle with more energy, gripping the rubber nipple with surprising determination. Luna watched every feeding, sometimes nudging the bottle with her nose as if supervising his technique. It wasn't until the end of the week that the first real test came. Atlas, finally strong enough to toddle around on unsteady legs, wandered close to Luna's tail. He pawed at it, batting playfully. Luna flicked her ear, but allowed it. Then Atlas leaned down and bit. Not hard, but harder than a dog would expect from something that looked so helpless. Luna stiffened. Atlas bit again, harder this time, more curious than malicious. Thor's head lifted, his muscles tensed. Hrik started to move, but stopped when Luna suddenly turned. She didn't snarl, she didn't bare her teeth. Instead, she barked one sharp note, corrective, directly into Atlas's face. Atlas froze, startled into stillness. For a second, he just blinked, confused and wide-eyed. Then, slowly, he lowered his head, tucked his chin, and pressed his belly to the ground in a tiny, wobbly gesture of submission that no one had taught him, but every dog understood. Luna waited a beat, then she leaned in and licked the top of his head. Lesson delivered. Lesson forgiven. Thor let out a low, approving rumble, as if confirming the young lion had passed his first test. And so the lessons continued. When Atlas tried to climb onto Thor's sleeping mat without invitation, the big dog simply stood, walked forward, and nudged him off with a firm shoulder. No growl, no bite. Just the unmistakable message, not yours. When Atlas cried for attention at 2 a.m, Thor ignored him. Luna looked away. Only when he settled down quietly did she return, curling beside him in reassurance. Boundaries taught with love, rules enforced with patience. It amazed Hrik how easily Atlas absorbed them, almost eagerly. The cub followed Luna's every movement, copying her posture, her steps, even the angle she held her ears when she listened. Thor became an anchor, calm, steady, and unmovable, someone Atlas instinctively deferred to, even when exploring. But it was the moment Atlas truly began to see the dogs as his world that made Hrik's breath catch. It happened late one afternoon when he carried Atlas outside for his first bit of sun. The grass brushed against the cub's belly. The warmth made his eyes go soft with contentment. Then a gust of wind blew across the yard, carrying the distant cry of a wild lion from somewhere across the reserve. Atlas froze. His little body stiffened, his ears flicked forward. The sound stirred something deep in him, something ancient, something written into bone and blood long before he ever took his first breath. For a moment, Hrik feared the wild call would pull Atlas away from the fragile bond forming in this little house. But then Thor barked. Not a warning, just a short, confident call. Atlas's head snapped back toward the dog. He blinked once. Twice. Then he followed Thor instead. He chose the pack standing beside him, not the wild blood calling from afar. Hrik swallowed hard, struck by the quiet enormity of that decision. "Good boy," he whispered, though the words weren't enough. "Good, good boy." As the sun dipped low across the plains, the little lion stumbled after his unlikely guardians, his white coat glowing faintly in the amber light. He wasn't strong yet, he wasn't safe yet, but he was learning about trust, about rules, about family. And as he curled up between Thor's front paws later that night, breathing soft and steady, Hrik realized something with absolute clarity. If Atlas survived, it would be because 2 Rottweilers taught him how to. By the time Atlas reached 4 months old, the tiny creature who once fit inside Hrik's jacket had become something else entirely. His legs lengthened first, awkward stilts that made him trip over the edge of rugs and bump into door frames. Then his paws swelled, comically large compared to the rest of him, as if nature were warning everyone what he would one day become. His baby blue eyes shifted slowly to a deep, gold-flecked amber. Even the soft fuzz on his neck thickened, hinting at a mane to be. And his claws, those changed most of all.
They grew faster than the rest of him, sharp as sewing needles, catching on blankets and scratching grooves into the wooden planks of the floor. When he played, they flashed without warning, shiny and new, uncontrolled, unintentional, a reminder that wildness lived inside him, even if he didn't understand it yet. Most days, though, Atlas behaved like the youngest child in an ordinary family, messy, curious, underfoot, constantly demanding attention. He followed Luna everywhere, copying her movements step by step. He watched Thor with wide-eyed reverence, trying to mimic the big dog's grounded confidence. And he watched Hrik too, though with a different look, one that carried a quiet question Hrik couldn't quite name. One warm afternoon, Hrik brought Atlas outside to explore the yard for the first time without being held. The world overwhelmed him. Sunlight bright on his white coat, insects humming in the grass, the earth warm beneath his paws. Luna trotted beside him, letting him bump into her legs. Thor stayed a few feet behind, playing the silent chaperone. Atlas sniffed a butterfly, sneezed, then pounced at a leaf blowing across the dirt, skidding sideways when he missed. Luna wagged her tail. Thor didn't smile, he never did, but his posture softened just enough for Hrik to notice. But everything changed in the span of one heartbeat. Atlas, in his excitement, leapt at Luna again, only this time he misjudged the distance. His claws extended, his weight came down wrong. 4 thin red lines streaked across Luna's shoulder as she yelped and fell sideways. The world froze. Atlas stopped mid-breath, eyes wide. He hadn't meant to hurt her. His whole body trembled with confusion. Thor moved first. He didn't attack, he didn't snap, he didn't punish out of anger. He walked forward with a silence that felt heavy, planted his broad paw firmly on Atlas's neck, and pressed down until the young lion folded into the dirt. Belly up, legs splayed, throat exposed in a full posture of surrender. Atlas didn't fight. He didn't even whimper. Thor held him there just long enough to make the point. When he released the pressure, Atlas remained frozen, humility radiating from every inch of him. Luna approached a moment later, investigating her own wound with a soft whine before leaning down to lick Atlas across the forehead, telling him the lesson was learned, the mistake forgiven. But for Hrik, the moment lingered. He saw not just the scratch, not just the submission, but the shadow lying beneath it, the first real glimpse of the imbalance growing between them. Atlas was stronger now, faster, heavier, and this was only the beginning. That evening, after tending Luna's shoulder, Hrik stepped outside to clear his mind. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving a bruise-colored sky stretching over the plains. As he leaned against the porch railing, he noticed a truck approaching from the distance, its headlights bouncing along the dirt track. It was Peter, the ranger from a bordering reserve, a rugged man with sun-creased skin and a habit of staring too long at things that worried him. He climbed out of his truck and nodded toward the house. "Heard you're raising a lion in there," he said, voice blunt as gravel. Hrik didn't deny it. Peter glanced toward the window, where Atlas sat pressed against Luna's side, licking his paws as if he almost caused a disaster hours earlier. "Cute now," Peter muttered, "but give him a few months. Blood remembers." Hrik stiffened. He's learning from Thor and Luna. He understands their rules. Peter snorted. Rules? He's a lion. Sooner or later, he'll remember what he is. Before Hrik could respond, a distant roar rolled across the plain, deep, resonant, unmistakably wild. Atlas reacted instantly, rising to his feet and staring toward the sound with a mix of curiosity and instinct. Peter raised an eyebrow. "See, that call is in his bones." Hrik swallowed. "And so is this family." Peter looked at him for a long moment, weary and unconvinced. then climbed back into his truck. "I hope you're right, because if you're wrong, someone will pay for it." The sound of the engine faded into the night. Inside, Atlas finally settled again between Thor and Luna, his breathing slow and content. But even from across the room, Hrik saw it, the fleeting moment when Atlas's ears tilted toward the wild, when something ancient stirred behind his amber eyes, something that wouldn't stay quiet forever.
By the time Atlas reached 8 months old, the change in him was undeniable. The clumsy, oversized paws that once tripped over everything had become steadier, stronger. His shoulders widened, his stride lengthened, and his babyish softness sharpened into the early lines of a predator. A pale golden fuzz now framed his neck, a hint of the mane that would one day crown him. Even the way he breathed sounded different, deeper, fuller, as though his lungs finally understood what they were built for. And yet, no matter how much he grew, Atlas still followed Thor and Luna like an obedient youngest child. He waited behind them at mealtime. He slept curled at their sides. He copied their every move on patrols across the property. But beneath all of that obedience, something else had begun to simmer, something neither dog nor human could quite define. It revealed itself one late afternoon. The three of them were playing in the open yard behind the sanctuary house. Luna darted left, Thor circled right, and Atlas bounded between them, still playful, still learning, but more powerful than he realized. When Luna slowed to catch her breath, Atlas lunged in a pounce that was meant to be gentle. It wasn't. His claws, longer now, sharper, slid across Luna's shoulder and tore 4 bright slices into her flesh. Her cry rang out sharp and wounded. Thor reacted first. In 2 strides, he was at Atlas's throat, not tearing, not biting, just pressing, one massive paw pushing Atlas flat to the earth, forcing him to confront the weight of his own mistake. Luna stood trembling, checking her shoulder, blood staining her dark coat. Atlas's tail dropped, his ears flattened, his entire body folded into the dirt in a posture so small it seemed impossible it came from an animal already approaching 90 pounds. When Thor finally released him, Atlas didn't rise. He stayed pressed to the ground until Luna stepped forward, sniffed him once, and touched her nose to his cheek. A quiet forgiveness, a simple one, but a powerful one too. Still, long after the yard fell silent again, the image gnawed at Hrik's mind. That flash of claws, the shock in Luna's cry, the raw force behind a simple mistake, and the dread that this was only the beginning. That night, after cleaning Luna's wounds and giving her the first dose of antibiotics, Hrik stepped outside. The sky above stretched thick and dark, pinpricked with stars, and the scent of dust and dry grass carried on the wind. He pressed his hands against the railing, trying to settle the unease inside him. He wasn't alone. A distant roar rolled across the plains, low, commanding, unmistakably lion. It vibrated through the boards under Hrik's feet. Inside the house, Atlas lifted his head, his body stiffened, his ears pointed toward the sound. For several long seconds, the call held him. His eyes seemed to shift, still the soft amber he'd grown into, but with something ancient flickering underneath, a remembering, a stirring. Then Thor barked from beside him, one low command. Atlas blinked. The spell broke. He walked toward the dogs again, pressing close, nudging Luna as though apologizing a second time. But the moment had carved itself deep into Hrik's awareness. Atlas heard the wild, and the wild had answered him. Later that week, the unease returned in a different form. Peter's words from the previous visit still hovered like smoke, and when the ranger returned,
Parked truck, crossed arms, unreadable expression, Hrik knew he hadn't come to exchange pleasantries. They stood near the fence line, watching Atlas in the distance trail behind Thor during their late patrol. "Growing fast," Peter muttered. "Soon he'll be bigger than both of them together." He still listens. He still submits. For now, Peter kicked at the dirt. "But look at him, Hrik. Look at the way he walks. That's a lion learning what power feels like." Hrik didn't answer. Peter sighed. "I get it. He's special. He's rare, and you've all bonded. But the day he realizes he's built to dominate, well, you better pray those dogs can still keep him in line." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even judgment. It was fear wearing honesty's clothing. As Peter drove away, dust trailing behind his truck, Hrik looked across the yard where Atlas was settling between Thor and Luna, grooming Luna's ear with slow, careful licks. The young lion looked so gentle, so trusting, so entirely devoted to the pack he'd grown up with. But Hrik also knew there were parts of Atlas no one could love out of him. Instincts buried deeper than loyalty. Shadows cast longer than childhood. He walked back inside as another roar echoed faintly through the plains. Atlas lifted his head again, listened, paused, and then, after a heartbeat too long for comfort, he turned away from the call of his own kind and pressed himself close to Thor. He chose the pack again. But Hrik felt the warning settle in the air, quiet and cold. There would come a day when choosing wouldn't be that simple.
By the time Atlas reached his first year, the sanctuary felt smaller. Not because the land had changed, but because he had. He moved with the confidence of a creature who finally understood his own body. His shoulders rolled with power. His stride carried weight. His mane, still just a young lion's early crown, caught the sunset each evening like spun gold. Yet every morning, he still waited behind Thor and Luna for his meal. Every night, he still curled beside them, the massive curve of his body wrapped protectively around their smaller shapes. He was a lion by nature, but by choice, by upbringing, he was pack. At least for now. But change often comes quietly, sliding in through small cracks before anyone realizes the foundation has begun to shift. It began with Luna. For weeks, she'd been different. Eating more, resting more, choosing shade sooner during patrols. Thor had grown increasingly protective, circling her with a seriousness that made Atlas pause before approaching. Even Atlas himself sensed something he didn't have words for. He followed Luna with gentler steps. His head tilted when she lay down. He sniffed the air around her with puzzled curiosity. Then, one early morning, Hrik saw what he'd been trying not to see. Luna's belly, no longer lean, rounded beneath her dark coat. He set his coffee down slowly, his breath catching. Puppies. Not someday. Not soon. Now. Hrik crouched beside her, running his hands along her sides with the practiced touch of a man who had delivered animals more than he could count. Luna's eyes softened, her tail thumping once in acknowledgement. 6, maybe 7 weeks along, which meant 3 weeks, maybe less. His heart tightened. A lion in the house was one thing. A lion living beside newborn puppies was something altogether different. Something that could tip into disaster with one confused instinct or one wrong sound in the middle of the night. He looked toward Atlas, who sat a few yards away in the first light of dawn, his white coat glowing softly. Atlas blinked at him with trust. Pure, uncomplicated trust. And the weight of that gaze nearly crushed Hrik's resolve. He didn't want to separate them.
but he might have to. That afternoon, he called an emergency meeting. Maria, James, and Dr. Okonkwo gathered around the old wooden table in the equipment room. The air felt heavy, tight with unspoken fear. On the whiteboard, Hrik had drawn 3 options, each one more difficult than the last. Maria crossed her arms. "We can't gamble with newborns," she said. "We separate Atlas now, today." James nodded grimly. "I can build a temporary enclosure by tomorrow, something strong." Dr. Okonkwo didn't speak immediately. She looked instead at the photos pinned on the wall. Atlas lying beside Luna, Atlas letting Thor correct him, Atlas sleeping with his head resting on Luna's paws. Then she said quietly, "Before we choose fear, we should look at evidence." Hrik swallowed. "Go on." "You've raised him 18 months. Has he ever shown predatory behavior toward small animals?" Hrik sifted through memory. The orphaned impala fawn, the nest of baby monkeys, the injured jackal pup. "He hasn't," Hrik admitted. "Not once." Maria frowned. "But puppies are different. The sounds they make." "Exactly," Dr. Okonkwo said. "And Atlas has been conditioned since infancy that those sounds mean pack, not prey." James shifted, clearly torn. "Even so, the risk is real," she agreed. "But separating him now, when Luna is most vulnerable, when Thor needs stability, that could fracture the entire hierarchy. You might be protecting the puppies, but breaking the family." Silence settled thickly across the room, the kind that only comes when every choice carries the possibility of regret. Finally, Hrik spoke. "We keep them together." Maria gasped. James put his hands on his hips, staring at the ground. But Dr. Okonkwo nodded with calm certainty. Hrik continued. "We monitor constantly. We keep tranquilizers ready. But we trust what we've built. We trust the pack." The decision hung in the air like a stone suspended by a thin thread. When the meeting ended and the others dispersed, Hrik remained seated. His hands trembled, whether for fear or hope. He couldn't tell. Outside, Atlas trotted across the yard, falling into step behind Thor and Luna with his usual devotion. But as evening settled and they returned to the house, Atlas did something he'd never done before. Instead of sleeping beside Luna's belly, he lay 3 feet away, watchful, cautious, as though sensing the precious cargo she now carried. His amber eyes never left her, not once. And for the first time since making the impossible choice, Hrik felt something shift inside him. Not certainty, not comfort, but something quieter, steadier. A flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, they hadn't made a mistake.
The day Luna went into labor, the sky felt wrong. It wasn't anything you could measure with instruments. The clouds sat too low. The wind changed directions too often. The light seemed too sharp around the edges. Even the birds went quiet earlier than usual, as if the whole savanna were holding its breath. Luna paced from room to room, unable to settle. She refused breakfast, refused dinner, refused even her favorite scraps from Hrik's plate. Her sides tightened in small, visible waves, then relaxed. Thor shadowed her every step, his head low, eyes never leaving her. Atlas followed at a respectful distance, ears pinned back, sensing something big was happening but not knowing where he fit in. By late evening, Luna had chosen her place. It was the small storage building attached to the back of the main house, cool, dry, lined with clean blankets Hrik had laid down days earlier just in case. She stopped in the doorway, looked back at Thor, then at Hrik, and walked inside with a slow, determined step that made both men swallow hard. Thor moved to follow. Atlas did too. Thor reached the doorway first,
then turned sideways and blocked it with his body, chest widening, stance rooted. Atlas stopped short, surprise flickering across his face. He tried to sidestep, but Thor shifted with him, a solid barrier of muscle and intent. A low sound rolled out of Thor's chest, not angry, but absolute. Not now. Not in there. Not yet. Atlas froze. For a heartbeat, Hrik saw a flash of something dangerous in the lion's eyes, not malice, but instinct, curiosity, the urge to see, to understand, to be close to the center of whatever was happening. 18 months of training and trust balanced on the edge of that heartbeat. Then, Atlas looked past Thor, saw Luna disappearing into the shadows with a soft, tired wag of her tail, and something in him softened. He lowered his head. His ears fell back, and instead of pushing forward, he did something no one could have predicted. He lay down in front of the doorway. Not to block it, not to claim it, he stretched out full length on the packed earth, his massive white body pressed flat, chin on the ground, paws extended forward like a sentry at a palace gate. If he couldn't be inside, he would guard the threshold. Hrik felt his throat tighten. "Good boy," he whispered, barely audible over the pounding of his own pulse. The labor began in earnest as the last light drained from the sky. The sanctuary slipped into darkness, broken only by the lantern on Hrik's porch and the faint glow leaking through the slats of the storage building. Inside, muffled sounds rose and fell, Luna's heavy breathing, soft whines, the restless shifting of blankets. Thor slipped in and out, dividing his time between Luna and the outside world. Each time he emerged, he checked Atlas first, touching noses, smelling his fur, as if confirming that the big lion understood the rules and accepted them. Atlas never moved from his post. Hours bled together. The night deepened. Insects sang. Somewhere far off, a hyena whooped at the edge of its territory. Hrik sat on the porch with a tranquilizer rifle across his knees, every muscle in his body wired tight. Maria had offered to sit with him, but he'd sent her to bed. If anything went wrong, there was nothing she could do that he couldn't, and nothing he wanted her to have to see. His eyes kept drifting back to Atlas. The lion lay still, utterly still, except for the slow rise and fall of his chest and the occasional flick of an ear toward a sound only he could hear. When Thor was inside, Atlas kept his gaze fixed on the door. When Thor came out, Atlas searched his face for answers. Is she okay? Are they okay? Is the world still right? Then, sometime after midnight, the air changed. Hrik felt it before he heard it, the way you feel a storm before the first thunder. The sounds inside the storage room shifted, Luna's breathing turning from strained to purposeful. Thor disappeared inside and did not come back out. And then, at last, it came. A high, thin noise. Not a lion's roar, not a dog's bark. A puppy's first cry. And another, 4 tiny voices overlapping in a fragile chorus of complaint and life. Hrik's hands clenched around the rifle, not from aggression but from pure, overwhelming awe. His eyes burned. He blinked hard. At the door, Atlas lifted his head. For the first time in hours, he rose to his feet. He didn't push forward, he didn't lunge, he stood there, huge and white and impossibly careful, staring into the darkness where those small voices had been born. Thor appeared a moment later, his muzzle damp, eyes bright in the dim light. He walked straight to Atlas and, without hesitation, touched his nose to the lion's. It was not a warning. It was an invitation. Atlas took a breath that seemed to draw the whole night into his lungs. Then he stepped forward, one paw, then the other, into the place Thor had guarded so fiercely only moments before. Hrik's finger hovered near the trigger, his heart hammering in his throat. Inside, Luna lay on the blankets, sides heaving, 4 small bodies pressed against her belly. 2 males, 2 females, all black and rust, slick with the remnants of birth and trembling with the effort of existing. Her eyes lifted as Atlas entered. She did not growl, she did not bare her teeth. Her tail gave a tired, unmistakable thump. Permission. Atlas lowered his massive head until his nose hovered inches above the nearest pup. He sniffed, slowly, with a care that didn't fit his size. Then he moved to the next, and the next, learning their scent, memorizing it. One of the males, the boldest of the bunch, broke away from the warm curve of Luna's body. Tiny legs worked clumsily against the blanket as he crawled toward the new source of heat, straight toward Atlas's paw. Hrik stopped breathing. The pup reached the lion's foot and began climbing, tiny claws digging into the thick fur, hauling himself upward with a determination entirely out of proportion to his size. Atlas froze. He didn't pull away, didn't shake, didn't even twitch. He laid there a solid white mass. Slowly, impossibly, the puppy reached Atlas's chest, then his neck, then the soft beginnings of his mane. With a small, satisfied squeak, the pup burrowed into that golden white ruff and went still. Warm, safe, home. Atlas remained motionless, eyes wide, as if he too couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Behind him, Thor settled down beside Luna, his body forming one half of a protective wall. Luna shifted to accommodate the nursing pups. Atlas, moving with reverence, lowered himself to the ground in a wide curve around them all, an outer ring of muscle and fur and quiet promise. He was the only creature in that room who could have ended every life there with a single violent movement. Instead, he became their shield. On the porch, under the watching stars, Hrik finally let the rifle slide from his hands. It landed softly across his lap. He realized only then that tears had slipped down his cheeks. Inside that weathered storage room, a new kind of family had just been born. And the world, though it didn't know it yet, one more miracle to reckon with.
The days after the birth felt unreal, as though the sanctuary had slipped into a quieter dimension where time moved differently. Everything softened, voices, footsteps, even the air itself. The world outside might still be full of dust storms, poachers, and the distant rumble of wild lions, but inside the little storage building, life existed in a fragile balance of warmth, milk, and the small hiccuping cries of 4 newborn puppies. Atlas barely left their side. Not because he was commanded to stay. No command had ever been given. He simply chose to. He slept curled around the family like a living wall, woke at the slightest whimper, and moved with a tenderness that didn't seem possible for a creature of his size. His enormous paws, once clumsy and heavy, now hovered above the ground when he stepped near the pups, as though he feared the earth itself might betray him. Luna accepted his presence completely. Thor tolerated it, with occasional glances that said, "I'm watching you," even though Atlas had given him no reason for worry. Still, hierarchy mattered, and Thor made sure the young lion remembered it. One morning, when the puppies were barely a week old, Hrik stood in the doorway watching a scene he knew he would never see again in his lifetime. 3 adults, 1 lion, 2 Rottweilers, lay in a close ring around 4 tiny bodies. The puppies were stronger now, their squeaks louder, their movements less random. Every so often one would wriggle out from under Luna's belly, and every single time
Atlas nudged them gently back with his muzzle, sometimes so delicately that Hrik felt his eyes sting. But the moment that lodged itself deep into his heart happened 3 mornings later. Freya, the smallest and quietest of the litter, wandered too far. She didn't get far, just a few feet from her mother, but in a world measured in ounces and inches, it was a dangerous distance. She wandered toward the open doorway, drawn by a drifting feather, paws unsteady, nose twitching. Before Thor or Luna even noticed, Atlas lifted his head. He rose slowly, careful not to disturb the others, and padded across the blanket. Freya kept walking, straight toward the sunlit threshold, her tiny body unaware of the hawks that circled the savanna or the snakes that sometimes hid in cool corners. Atlas reached her in 2 strides. He froze for a moment, unsure. His instincts must have been in conflict. Lion instincts, dog-learned instincts, something deeper than either. Then he lowered his head, opened his jaws, and closed them gently, so gently, around the loose scruff of her neck, just like a lioness would carry her cub. Freya dangled there, legs kicking once, then relaxing completely. Atlas carried her back across the room and set her down beside Luna. He stepped back, watching anxiously as if waiting for judgment. Thor approached him, and Hrik tensed. This was territory no lion had ever crossed before, not in behavior, not in responsibility. Thor sniffed Freya, checked Luna, then looked up at Atlas and licked him. One quick, firm stroke of approval. Atlas blinked, stunned. But the lesson wasn't over. Later that afternoon, Hrik witnessed the opposite side of pack discipline. Zara, the bossiest puppy, chewed on the corner of a medical kit she had no business touching. Thor barked, twice. She ignored him. Luna tried next, giving a sharper warning. Zara didn't care. Her tiny jaws kept chewing. Atlas rose from where he'd been lounging in the shade. He walked over, towering above the misbehaving puppy, and made a sound deep in his chest. Not a growl, not a roar, but a vibrating rumble that came from somewhere ancient. Zara froze. The kit fell from her mouth. She ran straight to Luna. If words existed in that sound, they would have been enough. Thor's tail wagged slightly. Atlas had passed another test. Day by day, the puppies grew bolder. They used Atlas like a playground, climbing his mane, sliding down his side, tugging his ears, tumbling under his paws. Hrik kept waiting for Atlas to lose patience, but the lion never did. If anything, he became gentler. He positioned his enormous body so they couldn't fall too far. He curled his claws tight against his paws so no one would be scratched. He endured every pounce, every yelp, every clumsy attempt to hunt him. But not everyone watching felt the same reassurance. One afternoon, as Hrik stood by the fence line observing the unusual family, Peter's truck rolled up again. The ranger stepped out, arms folded, jaw tight. He watched in silence as all 4 puppies scrambled up Atlas's back like sailors climbing a mast. Finally, he muttered, "You're tempting fate, Hrik." Hrik didn't look away. He's shown no signs of aggression. "He's a lion," Peter snapped. "Aggression isn't a sign, it's a nature." Hrik couldn't answer, not with the evidence contradicting every rule they'd ever been taught. But Peter wasn't wrong about everything. As Atlas grew, his instincts grew with him. Strength, size, power. The puppies adored him. Thor respected him. Luna trusted him. But Hrik knew trust alone wasn't enough. Not with what was coming. Not with how fast Atlas was changing. Not with how fiercely nature whispered to him every time a wild lion roared across the plains. This miracle, this impossible blended family, was holding together, but only just. There were cracks forming in the edges of fate, hairline fractures waiting for the wrong moment to split wide open, and the savanna had a way of testing every fragile thing it allowed to live. By the time the puppies reached 8 weeks old, the sanctuary felt louder, fuller, almost alive in a different way. Their paws pattered constantly against the floorboards. Their barking echoed through the yard, and their endless curiosity created a new problem every hour. Luna looked exhausted, but proud. Thor looked exasperated, but steady. And Atlas looked overwhelmed, amused, and quietly transformed. He had become more than a guardian. He was now a teacher. But just as the young lion settled into this new role, the savanna reminded him, and everyone else, that peace was never a permanent guest. It happened on a warm morning, just after sunrise. Hrik stepped outside with a mug of coffee, expecting to find the usual scene. Atlas sprawled under the acacia tree, puppies climbing him like a living jungle gym, Luna keeping order, and Thor issuing quiet commands with nothing more than a stare. Instead, he found tension sharp enough to taste in the air. Thor stood alert, tail stiff, body angled toward the northern fence. Luna had gathered the puppies behind her, pressing them close. Atlas stood several feet ahead of them, hackles raised, head low, muscles rippling beneath his white coat. Hrik followed their gaze. At the edge of the reserve, mere yards beyond the boundary fence, stood a massive, wild male lion. Dark mane, scarred muzzle, eyes like molten amber. A true king of the savanna. He stared directly at Atlas. The air thickened. The wild male let out a low, rumbling call, a sound that didn't ask permission so much as demand acknowledgement. It vibrated across the ground, rattling the boards beneath Hriks' feet. Atlas answered before he seemed to realize what he was doing. His chest expanded, his tail stiffened, a deep, primal sound rolled out of him, a half roar, half warning, still young, still unpolished, but undeniably lion. Thor barked sharply, trying to pull Atlas back into the world of obedience and structure. But Atlas didn't turn. He didn't even blink. Something ancient had risen inside him. Older than training, older than nurture, older than everything Thor and Luna had taught him. The wild was calling, and this time it felt personal. The male lion took a step forward. His mane rippled, his nostrils flared as he scented the air, scented Atlas, the adult dogs, the young puppies. A low growl rolled from his chest. A warning, a challenge, or something far more dangerous. Thor barked again, harder, trying to snap Atlas out of whatever trance he was sinking into. Luna pressed the puppies farther behind her, ears flat, eyes flicking nervously between her mate and the lion beyond the fence. For the first time in his life, Atlas didn't respond to Thor. Hrik felt ice slide down his spine. This was the moment Pieter had warned him about, the moment when instinct outweighed conditioning, when blood remembered what it was built for. Atlas stepped one pace closer to the boundary. Hriks' voice cracked across the yard. "Atlas, back!" The lion didn't look at him. Instead, he released a sound that shook the birds from the trees, a full, thunderous roar, the first of his life. It echoed across the plains like a declaration, powerful enough that the puppies whimpered and huddled against Luna. The wild male roared back, older, deeper, scarred with stories Atlas would never know. They stood there, two lions separated by a fence and a lifetime of different worlds, the air trembling between them. Atlas lowered his head. Muscles bunched. A decision hung in the balance. One leap, just one. Then a small sound broke the standoff. A whine. High, fearful. Freya, the tiniest puppy, had slipped around Luna and stood trembling at Atlas's hind leg, seeking comfort, unaware of the danger. She nudged Atlas with her little nose. Atlas blinked. Something shifted behind his eyes. He turned, slowly, looked at Freya, then at the other puppies trembling behind Luna, then back at Thor standing firm, ready to defend his family against something 4 times his size. The spell broke. Atlas stepped backward,
Then another step, and another. He positioned himself between the fence and the puppies, not to challenge the wild lion, but to shield the small lives behind him. His roar faded into something else, something closer to a warning. "This is my family. You don't touch them." The wild male assessed the scene for several long seconds. Then, without ceremony, he turned and walked into the tall grass, disappearing as quietly as he had arrived. The tension drained from the yard all at once. Hrik let out a long exhale. Luna sagged against the wall, exhausted. The puppies squeaked and tumbled toward Atlas. Atlas didn't lie down. Not yet. He stood there, breathing hard, eyes still trained on the horizon, as though expecting the danger to return. Only when Freya pressed herself against his front paw did he finally lower himself to the ground. Hrik approached slowly, his voice rough. "Good boy, Atlas. You came back." Atlas didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone, and he leaned gently into Henrik's hand. Later that evening, as the last orange light bled across the plains, Hrik sat on the porch replaying the moment in his mind. He had seen Atlas standing at the crossroads of two worlds, wild instinct on one side, chosen family on the other, and the young lion had stepped back. But the message was clear. One day, the wild would test him again, and next time, the choice might not be so easy. Weeks passed after the confrontation at the fence, but the memory of that roar, Atlas's first true roar, lingered like a distant storm. Even the puppies seemed to sense something had changed. They still climbed him, slept on him, and tugged at his tail with reckless joy. But every now and then, one would pause and stare up at him with wide, wondering eyes, as though recognizing the power humming just beneath his skin. Atlas himself changed in subtle ways. He walked the yard with slower, more deliberate steps. He listened more intently to the calls drifting across the plains. His mane thickened, the golden threads catching sunlight as if the savanna were trying to claim him through light alone. But the most notable change was how he watched the fence line, alert, uncertain, as though waiting for something only he could sense. Hrik worried. Thor noticed. Luna stayed close. Then came the evening. Everything reached its breaking point. It was late, later than Thor would normally allow the puppies to stay outdoors. The wind had died, leaving the air unnervingly still. The moon hung low and pale, washing Atlas's white coat in silver. Freya and Bolt wrestled in the dust. Shadow gnawed on a discarded rope toy. Zara sat at Atlas's side, watching him with an expression somewhere between admiration and ownership. Atlas barely moved. His ears twitched, catching sounds farther away than Hrik could hear. His nose lifted, drawing in scents on the barely there breeze. The puppies played around him, unaware of the tension gathering like static. Then, so faint Hrik almost missed it, a sound drifted across the plains. A lion's call. Not a challenge, not a threat, a beckoning. Atlas rose instantly, head turning toward the sound. His body stiffened, not with aggression, but with longing so sharp it made Hrik's heart twist. The puppies scrambled back in surprise. Thor barked once, sharply, trying to anchor Atlas in place. Atlas didn't budge. Another call came, longer, deeper. It wasn't the same lion who had appeared at the fence. This call was different, softer, younger, a lioness. Hrik's breath caught. This wasn't a test of dominance. This was a call to join something else entirely, a pride, a future, a world that Atlas had never known but was born to be part of. Thor barked again, louder, almost desperate. Luna stood, trembling, sensing the shift in the air. Atlas looked back at them. For a moment, his eyes flickered, wild instinct wrestling with 18 months of tack-bonded life. His muscles tensed, his tail twitched. Every part of him leaned toward the sound carried on the wind. Then the puppies began to whine. Not from fear, not from confusion, but from heartbreak. Shadow crawled onto Atlas's front paw. Bolt pressed himself against Atlas's foreleg. Freya sat small and helpless, staring up at him as though her entire world were about to fall apart. Zara, the boldest, stood directly in front of him, blocking his path, her tiny chest puffed out, her little tail stiff, making a soft growl that was more plea than a command. Thor stepped forward too. No bark this time, just presence. Steady, strong, unyielding. The same dog who had taught Atlas every rule he lived by. Atlas looked at him, then at Luna, then at the puppies who loved him without hesitation or fear. Another call rose across the plains, urgent this time, insistent. Atlas inhaled deeply. The world seemed to pause, suspended between two futures. Then, Atlas turned away from the fence. He walked, slowly, back to the puppies. He lowered his massive head until it rested on the ground among them. Freya crawled onto his muzzle, Bolt curled against his throat, Shadow nestled under his chin. Zara flopped across his front paw like a victory flag. Thor approached and touched his nose to Atlas's mane. Approval, acceptance, family. The call from the plains echoed one last time. Atlas's ears twitched, but he didn't rise. He didn't answer. He didn't even look. His choice was made. He belonged to this pack. When the wild could not pull him away, when instinct bowed to loyalty, when the lion chose the dogs over his own kind, that was the moment the impossible became undeniable. News of the event spread slowly at first, whispers among rangers, curious notes exchanged between veterinarians. Then a volunteer posted a short video of that moonlit evening online. In it, Atlas sat unmoving while the distant lioness called, puppies clinging to him like shadows. It went viral within hours. People around the world watched the young white lion refuse the call of instinct for a pull of something deeper. Love, loyalty, chosen family. And when reporters eventually came to film the sanctuary, they captured something even more astonishing. The entire pack, Thor in front, Luna at his side, Atlas behind, and 4 puppies marching proudly at Atlas's heels, walking the perimeter together at dawn. A formation no one had ever seen before, a family no one believed could exist. A lion who should have taken what he wanted, choosing instead to protect what he loved. As the sun lifted over the savanna, Hrik stood on the porch, watching them with a heart heavier and fuller than he ever expected. Atlas wasn't a mistake of nature. He wasn't a miracle either. He was proof of something far greater, that sometimes family isn't written in blood or instinct, but in the choices we make when the world calls us somewhere else.